What do the most successful, growing businesses have in common? They're working together in Slack. Slack is where work happens, with all your people, data, and information in one AI-powered place. Grow your business in Slack. Visit slack.com to get started.
I'm Inc. Executive Editor Diana Ransom.
And I'm Editor-at-Large Christine Lagorio-Chafkin.
And you're listening to From the Ground Up. Today's episode, Finding Product Market Fit. When we cover successful startups here at Inc., there's one piece of business jargon that comes up again and again: product market fit.
That's right. And while getting it right is not at all simple, the concept itself is super basic. When you start a company, you're selling something, your product. And then there are people who are going to buy it, you hope, your market. That is all product market fit is, finding both the folks who want a thing and the right thing for them.
We spoke with founders who had totally different approaches to product market fit. One did rigorous surveying, testing over social media, asking folks for feedback before launch. Another had a decidedly less direct approach. They had a product they loved, and they needed to figure out whether other people liked it too.
So we sat down with Steven and Brittany Yeng of Skrewball Whiskey and Michelle Cordeiro Grant of Gorgie to hear their novel approaches to finding customers and getting their products to them.
To learn how, we started the conversation by asking Steven what made him want to mix peanut butter and whiskey.
What happened in my life led me to create peanut butter whiskey with my wife. So I was born in Cambodia, third world country. My parents just survived a genocide that happened, lost their parents. It's the Khmer Rouge genocide. Essentially, if you're a Skrewball, that's your death sentence. A Skrewball is someone that follows their own heart and stand up for what they believe in, essentially a black sheep. When I was around 1 year old, I woke up paralyzed. And like most parents, they decided to get medical help for me. So they left the landmine borders of Thailand and took us about 2 weeks into a refugee camp. Essentially, that's a prison. And that's where we stand in line for food and water for about 6 years. And then we got sponsored by a random act of kindness by a couple that live in San Diego. And that's where we were given a basket of food, beef, fruits, bread, and peanut butter. So I fell in love with peanut butter ever since. Started my first restaurant at 22. A lot of parents that went through hardship want their kids to be a doctor, engineer, lawyer. Instead, I went to hospitality, didn't know what I was doing, put peanut butter in everything, and wings and noodles, and then in peanut butter Jameson. And that's how it started, just putting real peanut butter in Jameson.
Wow. I have to ask, are your parents happy with your peanut butter choices now?
I think so now. They worked at a donut shop back then. Nobody wants to work at a donut shop. It's very, hard labor, very little margins, but you only need to learn 3 phrases. Hello, what can I get you? Thank you. Have a good day. You pick, point, and bag. They held on to the donut shop up until 2021. Thinking that we might need a backup plan just in case Skrewball didn't make it. So.
Well, it seems like you're doing famously right now. But I want to ask you, why did you think that, obviously you like peanut butter and, you associate it with good things for you and your past. But why did you think that Americans would kind of get down with the idea of drinking liquor that tastes like peanut butter?
I was just in my own bubble and I thought peanut butter and whiskey, why not, right? But then didn't realize that was one of the dumbest ideas in the world. Everybody thought it was like, you're ruining our whiskey. What are you doing? Right. And so for me, I was like, peanut butter. Yeah, wait, you don't do that? You don't do this with peanut butter, with cookings and stuff like that? And so it literally took my wife, who really believed in it. I was not all in on it. And it happened where we decided it was a family or career. So Brittany had a master's degree in chemistry and went on to doing pharmaceutical patent litigation for a big global law firm. And so when we struggle to become parents, and when we're blessed with our first daughter, I was getting home before sunrise, closing a bunch of bars and restaurants, and she was leaving home before sunrise, working with the East Coast firm. We're in the West Coast. And that's when we said, screw it. And so screw it for us is the moment you stop asking yourself why and start asking yourself why not. So we said, screw it, let's go into this peanut butter whiskey thing. And 2 things normally happen when we call R&D team, research companies. They normally never return our calls, or they put us on mute, laugh their ass off, and pretty much, son, do you have a screw loose? This is the dumbest idea in the world. You look like nice people. You seem like good people. I just know that this won't work. So no one believed in us.
Yeah, Michelle, I see you nodding. Do you have a similar story in your background?
Oh, yes, yes. I mean, as we all met when I was doing Lively, right? My background is in fashion and retail, also the daughter of two Indian immigrant parents. And so I had a 2-week stint in law school because I thought I was supposed to be a doctor, lawyer, or banker. But once I realized, building brands is where I was most comfortable, our first brand was Lively, which was built backwards. It was all crowdsourced and community based because exactly that is like, could peanut butter and whiskey be what people actually want? And what do people actually want from the bra industry? Lovely to see Instagram was a place that I could actually ask people. And that was a really serendipitous journey. After the end of that chapter for me, I was like, what's next? What I wanted to create was something in wellness. I was like, how can I make wellness fun, like fashion, colorful, exciting, inspirational? And what I wanted to make and what I ended up coming out with were totally different. And it's because I took that same path, right? I started with this concept of longevity and health and wellness, but making it exciting. And this kind of came out of the pandemic. But when I started to survey my communities and ask people what they wanted, they're like, okay, Michelle, I love that. Like, could you make it drinkable? And I was like, how about a candy? And they're like, but drinkable? I'm like, a powder? They're like, no, like a drink that I can open. And, the world kind of speaks to you when you're curious is what I find as an entrepreneur. We're constantly looking for lights to shine and things to kind of catch our eye in terms of what's next. Because I always tell people like what the world sees as impossible, we see as like truly possible to the point as already existing, right? And for Gorgie, that's what happened. I saw energy drinks everywhere. And I was like, weird, like, I don't drink these energy drinks. Like, why is everybody around me, especially in Florida, drinking them? They're not good for you. And then I was like, well, maybe they are. So I went to Whole Foods to buy one, and there wasn't one on the shelf. And I asked the lady, and she's like, no, we can't sell them. They don't meet our health criteria. And it was like, oh, the lights went on. What if energy met wellness? Like, what if the drink was energy meets the proposition of what I was creating? And so we put that on TikTok, and 100,000 likes later in 2 weeks, it was like, oh, this impossible is possible. So that kind of like made me realize you just have to ask.
Yeah, let's dig into that topic of asking and getting that feedback. I feel like, your two brands are so different, Lively, lingerie, athletic wear, and then Gorgie, energy health drink. But they sort of have, in concept, the same target audience, right? This is young women. You sort of knew your customer and you knew who to ask, right? So I want to talk about how you thought about product market fit from the start and how you kind of refined that idea. And then I want to get back to Skrewball because you took a sort of different approach and one big shot at it. And I want to talk about both.
Yeah. So I think about, the women in the audience that we curated at Lively was very a groundswell, going city by city, and then also, nurturing them digitally. And so we ended up with 165,000 organic brand ambassadors around the country. Now, these are, women that were in their early 20s, and now like 7 years later, they're building families, they're going to Costco, they're going to Target, drop-offs. Guess who needs energy? Working out, trying to look like social media, all the things, right? And so here's how I actually started. Behind me is like a bunch of whiteboards, brand boards. I would pump music, and there's like 7 boards behind me with different brand ideas. And I would start posting them in text threads and then creating Google surveys. And the rule with Google surveys is I make them on my phone. They take a total of 2 minutes to complete, and I send them to 2 degrees of separation. You cannot ask your family and friends. Your family will tell you they love it or they hate it. There's nothing in between. But if you get to people that don't know you, they give you an honest reaction. And that's how I got to that. But the similarities to the two brands is 2 things. Number one, it's socially native. So you actually see people on the can that participated in deciding what the drink should be. And so like you'll see actually like photos of photographers, people on social media, et cetera. The reason being is they told us, we don't want 200 milligrams of caffeine, Michelle. We want 150. Product market fit, number one. Number 2, we don't want a can that we're like hiding in our bag and sneaking out of, X convenience store or Y mass chain. We want something we're proud to share and post, like a beauty brand. We want to be inspired. Oh, so no problem. We created a magazine with editorial and photos. And most importantly, we want it to fulfill our number one need, which is we just need energy and we want to buy it in a place that's convenient at the right price. Benefits are extra. And I find that product market fit is really hard sometimes as an entrepreneur because you're trying to create something that's almost too far outside of the box versus just on like a slight twist, the 80-20 rule. So we're an energy drink, but we happen to be better for you, better tasting, better looking.
Speaking of, outside of the box, Steven and Brittany, you went out there with your product and then had to figure out like if consumers were going to be there for you, right? You, from what I understand, you took $150,000 and found out. Is that right?
Yeah. No, I think it's a very different approach than Michelle took, exactly like you're saying. I think for us, it was actually funny. I was looking at exactly how some of these big companies choose to put products in the market. And I started laughing at the end of the conversation. I was like, you do realize Skrewball would never exist if we followed this pathway. And it's really listening to the customer and asking them what they want. And we actually didn't ask them what we want. We gave them something we saw they were attracted to, right? So sometimes they don't even know something exists to ask for it. And so that was, Steve created this. And like he said, he was in this bubble and he was selling it to people and we saw people enjoying it. And we saw a wide range of people enjoying it. And I was the one who became a lawyer and had a very different, listened to my parents a little bit on that one. And I had a very different circle and I saw them coming and enjoying this, right? These were people that normally drink wine and other things and they were enjoying this. And so I actually got to see, right? And like she's saying, with Michelle was saying, you don't want to just ask them what they like, right? It's just really experiencing customers and seeing what they're, not just do you like this or not, but really understanding what they like about it, what they don't like about it, and going with that. And so we saw this market for it. Still, we were in the industry and everybody told us like we're a really nice couple and not to waste our money on it. But we took every cent we had and took a huge gamble. And by the time we were ready to launch, I had a little baby. And I still remember the day of telling my dad I'm going to quit this amazing job that I had worked for and go all in on this.
So they thought you were a little bit batty, but...
Yeah, so I think we had $3,100 to our name when we're getting ready to launch. $3,100 getting home when our electricity bills at times would be turning off and like, all right, how do we do this? Regarding consumer research, I have the luxury of having bars and restaurants, and Brittany would innovate and would create, and then with friends or random people be like, hey, try this, try this. So we have all walks of life that's coming in there. And so I would just use my consumer study and see their reaction, random strangers. As Michelle mentioned, you don't want to go to your friends and family because they love you and they don't want to insult you. So a lot of them are just say, oh, it's good. But then these random people, you just send it and I would stand in the corner like a creep, just like, okay, what's their reaction? What's going on? And that's how we were able to tweak a bunch of stuff. And, with $3,100 to our name, the one thing I know is that it doesn't cost money to give maximum effort and to make an impression. And so I would just hit the road and just go sample and taste, and just any opportunity that people give me, I just go and do it. And, when you try to bottle the world's dumbest idea, also, many people won't give you time of the day. People that you thought they were friends or people that thought that you have a relationship, when it's time for them just commit a little bit of money to invest in it for them to bring the product in, a lot of them just didn't bring it in. And so we had to rely on the industry, which we were a big part of with the service industry, the bartenders. And it was the bartenders that really push us and help promote us, because a lot of times is the bartenders, I've been in the industry for over a decade. The bartenders tend to either go to real estate at the same time bartending because the money's too good, right? But then they also see many suppliers coming in, pitching them about, hey, try this liquor, I got a new product. So they always dream of going to there, but just, the timing's not right or their situations are right and never did it. So it was us that make the leap, and them supporting us is kind of supporting their dream also, to make sure hopefully this comes true for them and for us also.
You know, it's interesting. I have this vibe of listening to Steven, and it just makes me think of like the Steve Jobs approach to producing a product. You know, it's like you build the thing and then consumers don't really know what they want until you give it to them. But I feel like Michelle's experience was like a little bit different. Like, let me just go ask the people what they want.
Totally.
And then do the thing. And it sounds to me like we've got two different approaches here, and I'm not sure we're going to be able to judge like which one's better or what, but it's
showdown.
Yeah.
Steven and Brittany, like, who did you imagine was your consumer and who is your consumer? Is it different? Are they different?
I imagine like, the 21 to 25, but our main consumer is probably the 30 to 45, 50, and even like older also.
Interesting. Have you changed the product based on those people's tastes?
No, because Skrewball, it's so versatile. So I think of the way we developed Skrewball, we wanted to be versatile in cocktails. We just kind of changed it a little bit towards older palates for tastings regarding like craft mixologies and craft cocktails, and insert Skrewball. Think of Skrewball as like a peanut. If you think of my favorite food is Thai food, think of it as like pad Thai or papaya salad, where you got the sweet, the savory, spicy, and sour. So those are the flavor profile that really works with Skrewball. So then we just changed our approach a little bit towards just different type of cocktails, but not change the formula.
Okay, now I want a papaya salad martini. That would be wild. Has anyone made that yet?
No, I mean, I've done many martinis, like a New York sour. Espresso martini is the go-to for Skrewball.
I would love to kind of like sort of veer off into a different direction here. But at Inc., we hear so many stories about, sort of product market fit, but how entrepreneurs stumbled into it. It's like you think you're building one thing for a certain type of audience, and then next thing you know, oh, wait, this entirely different audience wants my product. Or the audience that I intended to target actually wants this random byproduct of my actual product. So I'm not really like getting into specifics here just because we hear so many stories. Michelle, actually, I'd love to hear your experience about where you think that founders may go wrong, or, like what are the mistakes that they may be making? Or is this all just part of the process?
To answer that question, I would say, as Steven, Brittany, and I had different approaches coming in, there was one key overlap, which was relentless trial and honest trial. And when you as a founder can get to that place to do what Steven described, where you have someone taste your product and you're like veering in the corner and being like, ugh, like ready for the honest feedback, that's the most important step that I think a lot of people miss, because they're so convinced that what they created is exactly what the world wanted. And I remember it with Lively, we would have these focus groups and I would say, don't tell them that I'm the founder or part of this, like have someone else moderate and I'll sit at the table. And I remember people being like, this trim looks like Michael's or this, that, and like inside, I'm like dying inside, right? Or, the same thing with Gorgie. The summer of 2022, my poor family, everywhere I went, I had these glass bottles in a cooler looking like Breaking Bad and just passing shots out to anyone that would try them. And if you came to my house, it was like set up like a grid with like a blind taste testing and sampling. But it really humbles you and it gets you to understand like outside of your brain and like what the world wants. Coming from corporate and then going to Lively, I created a rule, which is my passion is looking at industries that are very vast, but feel a little stagnant. And so if you think about bras, incredible CAGR. Victoria's Secret had 40% market share when I was leaving to create Lively. And it just wasn't like where my heart and soul was and what I saw on social media at the time. The same aha happened for energy when I was in the grocery store that day. I was like, hold on, this category is $18 billion in this country and I don't drink it. Why? It's not because it's not for me. It's because maybe there isn't something in the category that's for my genre. And is there room for that? So it's the juxtaposition of where your heart is beating towards an idea, but then like that humble step to be like, does anybody care?
How much of this is marketing though? Is it like just simply having a beautiful can that appeals and typography that appeals to a certain set of people versus like actually producing a product that fits with them?
Yeah, marketing, promotions, shelf space, right? Getting it into bars, Steven, as you did, and getting those advocates on your behalf, the bartenders. Like, that's all publicity, right? Like, how much is that versus just being something that fits a need?
I think the answer to that is repeat and retention. That is the differentiator between building a brand and like not lasting through that startup statistic of imploding, after 6 years or 90% after 9 years, because you can market and have that sizzle and that beauty. But if you can first spend the time on making a product that people genuinely love and are coming back for, then the hard part's the marketing, because the product is good, right? Like, we have a 40% repeat rate on this drink because we were relentlessly changing it and continue to evolve. And I don't know, Steven, if you feel the same way, and Brittany, but when you feel like the consumer has said yes to the product, now spend the money in marketing. Because otherwise you're going to do it eventually and you just wasted time.
Well, the situation with Steve and Brittany is that they also have this no offense, Michelle, but like Steve has this incredible backstory that like is, I want to ask you about peanut butter, because like I want you to talk to me about peanut butter and your backstory, and just it sort of sells itself. Like, I want to try your whiskey because of your love for peanut butter.
Yeah, and who you are.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's interesting. Do you use it as part of your marketing?
We led with the product, right? And the packaging. And with Brittany was able to create the packaging. Maybe Brittany, you want to talk about the packaging since you got the bottle behind you?
Yeah, no, and I think the thing is Steve has an incredible story. And ultimately, like Michelle was saying, if you don't have a product to back it up, you can do all the marketing in the world and people will try it, but they're not going to come back to it. And so really, I think as far as actually building a brand with longevity, you do have to have the good product, and marketing alone isn't going to get you there. I think that when we were building the product and the brand, I think we used the inspiration, not just of Steve's early story of coming to America, but the bar that he had built and everything. And we wanted to create something that was more relatable to the customer, because there's only so much that you can share with somebody. And I think sometimes, it's like building a relationship. If we share too much in our first interaction, it's a little bit overwhelming. And so I think I think a lot of where we catch people is on the bottle, it says to the misfits, black sheep, and screwballs. And then we have a sea of white sheep. You can't see it on this, but there's actually a sea of white sheep with the black sheep kind of standing out. And usually, like, the oddball or the misfit is kind of off in the corner. But here it's someone leading the pack. And so I think when we were building this, like Steve said, we knew that we thought peanut butter whiskey just made sense and it was normal. And it was very clear to us how abnormal it was. And so instead of hiding behind that, we took that and led that front and center and built that on the front. And then some of Steve's story we've built into the back of the label, so that actually if you drink the bottle, you can read about it and learn about it. But it's kind of at a second stage once you've already tried the product and got to know it. And so I found that you have to layer these things to the relationship you're building.
You're a growing business, which means you need every spare hour you can find. That's why the most successful, growing businesses are working together in Slack. Slack is where work happens, with all your people, data, and information in one AI-powered place. Start a call instantly in huddles and ditch cumbersome calendar invites. Or build an automation with Workflow Builder to take routine tasks off your plate. No coding required. Grow your business in Slack. Visit slack.com to get started.
And just like Michelle, packagings really matter. And for us, is that being in the bar industry, we want that long neck where bartender could really easy grip and pour quickly. And also there's a grip of Skrewball that sits on the side, so to hold the grips also. And then the heavy base, giving that premium. If you just look at it, it's stand the shelf. There's hundreds of thousands of SKUs of alcohol out there. And how do you stand out? And so one of the things is that is liquid to lip and trial, as Michelle said. And I want to be there. And I still have never introduced myself as a founder or an owner unless hey, are you that guy? It's kind of embarrassing. Like, I'm at a trade show at times and they have an image me, why peanut butter? And I'm like, gosh, this is kind of embarrassing, the image of me. But I always try to get the consumer just reaction, and I want that honest reaction because they probably think I'm just a sample agency that's sampling them, and then afterward they love it and they share the story how they get their friends or their relatives to try it. We had no money. We had $3,100 to our name. How we grew was look at the lips and people proving that peanut butter whiskey was a good thing, that it actually tastes delicious. So that kind of feeling that you know something that your friend doesn't know or your loved one doesn't know, and then all of a sudden you're like, hey, try this Skrewball peanut butter whiskey. They never heard of it. We were in a category ourselves where it's the world first peanut butter whiskey. So we didn't have somebody to follow, and so when that person tried it, loved it, then they go to their friends and loved one, and they try loved it, they go to their friends. So it's just snowball effect that grew. So Skrewball, so in the States is for any brand over $20 considered premium. We were the fastest to 1 million case for any brand over $20. We're fastest to 2 million case ever also. For a team of 4 brand ambassadors, including myself and Brittany, it was like the blind leading the blind, but somehow we made history as the fastest growing liquor brand ever in history. Also the most copycat brand also. I think there's now about 54 or 55 copy brands out there.
Oh, no, that's a different podcast. Yeah.
Whole nother episode. We'll have to have you back on. But I'd love to talk about like test marketing your product or service a little bit longer if I could. So at Inc. we used to have this package and I would manage it. It was called Coolest College Startups. So we would, basically seek nominees from campuses across the across the country. But what appealed to me about hearing the stories from college-age founders was that they all used their own campuses as a test market.
Yeah, it's a great testing ground, right?
I thought it was brilliant.
Tons of people just walking around with little bit of free time.
They're all roughly the same age. They all have basically the same needs. They need to cram for some exam or something like that. I guess this is sort of a long-winded way to ask a question of do you recommend that people find these sort of sandboxes to test in, and how do you get those? Michelle, maybe you could tell us.
Yeah, absolutely. They're easier than you think, right? So it's where do I think people are that would experience this drink? So I had 3 cohorts, I'll call it, right? Number 1 was the soccer field. So I would take the drink to soccer fields at 9 and 10 o'clock in the morning and just be like, guys, want to try something?
Just see it now.
Moms, I don't know. Don't give it to your kids. Yes, in a glass bottle. And, get that sampling. Once I had a can, then I was like, okay, think bigger, Michelle. What are we doing next? Art Basel was coming. This idea started over Labor Day. Art Basel was happening in Miami. I got invited to do a podcast and I was like, okay, but only if I could have a bar area to show a new product. And so we showed up with those big retractable banners, cans like you see behind me, took over a bar and made it look like a brand that already existed, and then just walked away. So you can imagine Miami, jam-packed by the beach, all different genres of people walking by, went to dinner, came back, and then saw different types of people holding the can. Now you could see who naturally was pulling it off of the bar. We found a 50-50 spread of men and women. We also found an older cohort. And then we would go up to them and be like, oh, cool, what's that? And they're like, oh, it's the energy drink that's all over Miami. We're like, cool, that's awesome. And you can hear how they're playing back what you're putting out there. So the more you can stand your brand up as it exists already and find those free spots, I would recommend. I would say my other greatest, hack for Gorgie was there was a trade show called Expo East in September of 2022. Labor Day, had the idea, September 22, I have a liquid. I don't have a brand to show up to the trade show, but something in my stomach was just go. Before the trade show, I found a girl that was finishing college in Philadelphia. It's my mother-in-law's next door neighbor. I was like, hey, could you maybe have a happy hour with, 12 of your friends? I'll take care of the bar tab. I just want to have Gorgie on the table and have them experience it. And we did a whole thing, took photos. They did little postcards with the name. They would call the flavor. It wasn't the overall take of the event, but the scene was set. I then took pictures and all of the feedback from that, went to Expo East and sat at the hotel nearby where everybody stays, because that's where everyone hangs out, and just started showing people in the industry, suppliers, lawyers, different people. And then the word trickles around and everyone's like, what's that drink? Have you seen that girl with the energy drink in the cooler? Right. And you're starting to get a sense for people care about this. So that's why I say the three genres are like industry, big outward, like Art Basel, and then like soccer field.
Yeah, that's guerrilla marketing, right?
Yeah, that's great.
And then also, Steve, you and Brittany, you had a similar experience where you were able to capitalize on that, like a single yes from, I guess, the one liquor store.
Yeah, and so for us is that so in alcohol industry, we cannot give away alcohol. You always have to purchase, so we can't go on the college campuses to go sample.
Oh, I did not know that.
It's kind of true, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so you can't just go unless they have a retail licenses, and even at retail licenses, that they have to have a sampling licenses for them to even be able to pour. And so, and then as Michelle mentioned, fake it till you make it.
That was also potentially going to be the podcast title, by the way. Just kidding.
Now it can be.
My parents and from their parents, they always instill in us that you have to be there when people need help most. It'll come back to you tenfold. So we always believe in giving back from the donut shops to the bars and restaurants, like all firefighters and policemen. They all eat for free. And every time they need to come in, just just put an order and come and get it. And so we thought that we could there's a nearby liquor store. We do tremendous volume of the peanut butter and Jameson shot, which Brittany converted to peanut butter to Skrewball. I thought I could just go in there and ask for a favor since we're only a block away. And the general manager there was like, absolutely no way. That like, I don't want products to be sitting on the shelf. And then I was like, just sad that I wasn't given an opportunity, and then happened to walk out and the owner walked in and he knew my parents before, and then he said, I'll give you a shot, but you have to do whatever you can to move this. So he gave me the worst spot possible in the very back of the liquor store. It's all caked up. I remember it's like Southern Comfort, all caked up, dusty. I asked for broom and mop. I mopped the place and cleaned up the shelf and stuff like that. And then I just told my friends and colleagues and some of my staff, hey, go in there once we announce that we're launching in there, go in there and make the biggest scene possible, like you found gold or something. And so he brought in 3 cases, and then they're just making the biggest scene. Oh my God, I found this. This is great. I love it. Right. And then he called me back and I've never seen anything like this. This is incredible. I've never seen any liquor brand like this before for a launch. I was like, see, I told you, I think it'll sell. And then he's like, well, call your distributor and give me 10 cases. And I was just like, are you sure? That's a lot.
Did you have a distributor at that point?
Did you have 10 cases?
You have to have a 3-tier system. So,
okay.
But our distributor was a man in a van, pretty much. And then we call him up. And I'm like, he wants 10 cases. I'm afraid to burn this relationship. I try to talk him out of it, not let him know I had a lot of friends and family go in there. So then they drop it off the next day. And then I didn't hear anything. I'm like, oh God, he is just going to be so mad at me. So we launched Friday. It was July 20th, 2018. Then Saturday. And then Sunday, he gave me a call. And I thought he was just going to yell at me. Like, what trickery did you? He's like, all right, what do you have? I want 500 cases.
Oh my God.
And I was like, wait, what happened? It sold out again. And it didn't rely on the help of my friends and colleagues and coworkers. Instead, they sampled it to their friends and family, and they all rushed to buy it. And they create a scene also. And so he wanted whatever we had. And that's kind of how it started. Just like, okay, we think we got something now.
How do you do all this when you can't necessarily try something in person, or when you have a service versus a product?
They were both brands that were growing during the pandemic, right? Like, that's an interesting moment in time to think about sampling, to think about getting customers in person, right? But you both did it. Do you have, I mean, we don't need to kind of go back through all of that, but one learning maybe would be really interesting to share from each of you.
I was going to say, Steven used the word snowball, and I always say pack the snowball tight, because the first year you're feeling like you have to conquer the world, but actually, no, you want to find like your community and like your true brand lovers, which could be a couple hundred people, it could be 1,000 people. It doesn't need to be that massive. It needs to be that loved. And that's like a hard feeling to digest when it's like, I have 400 followers and like 100 customers, right? But if they love your product, like, and then they start telling people, the snowball's packed and now it starts to roll. And when you start to push it down the hill, they tell their friends, they tell their neighbors, they're posting on Instagram, they're sharing on Insta or Facebook, they're putting it in newsletters. Like once you feel like the snowball's tight, let it roll down the hill. And that's where that repeat, what he just said, they're telling everyone, now everyone's ordering and asking. Like one of the greatest feelings I had was a woman found our drink at Costco. And she emailed us and she said, I'm in Iowa and I love this drink and I want to have it at all my fitness studios. And you're like, that's the Snowball. Or like, I got a wedding invitation or a card from a dentist. You're like, the Snowball, right?
Do you actually say the Snowball every time something like that happens?
Basically, yeah. I say to the team, I'm like literally looking at, a wedding card. I'm like, Kate and Blake, Snowball.
That's amazing. Yeah.
So for us is that Brittany was we got a toddler and then Brittany was pregnant. So essentially peanut butter is the glue that brought us together, but maybe it worked too well. And so we started doing national distribution summer of 2019. And then our timing is just, every roadblock in front of us, we hit it multiple times. And every single time when we thought we're just coming out of it, then we just hit another roadblock. And so we had, was it $3,100 surname or $1,500 surname at the time? We just, every money we put in more just to reinvest. And so then I remember March of 2020, we had $640,000 to our name and we got national distribution. And all of a sudden the world was coming to an end. The bartenders, a lot of the bartender server who really support us, the industry, the bartender, which I was part of, we make good money, but then we also spend money like crazy. Also, we make $300 that night. We're probably going to spend $350 that night. Our industry was affected the most immediately. There was no stimulus. Brittany came to me and we look at each other. You know what? If the world's going to come to an end, let's just go out with a bang. And we decided to donate immediately $500,000 to a lot of the service industry, a lot of the COVID relief for children restaurant employees, California Restaurant Association, and then really a lot of the bartenders. And we put together, writing a check is one thing, but then we put together packaged foods for thousands of bartenders. At the time, again, there was no stimulus and everyone's wiping the shelf. And Brittany, I remember she gave birth to our second daughter, January 13th, 2020. And, I remember that she was at 3 a.m. she delivered, and then at 9 a.m. she was back on the computer. We had to. It's not because of she wants to, because she had to. We were just our team and Brittany. Brittany was the CEO, the president. She runs everything, and so we couldn't afford to have downtime with her.
I think especially what you'll see overlap between what Michelle was doing and what we were doing as far as the consumer feedback is, I think a lot of times with big corporations, they get this consolidated feedback of what people are saying. Whereas I think it was so important for us to actually talk to customers. And I think that was a way for us to continue to talk to people and get their real honest feedback. And so I think when you get these consolidated feedback, it is sometimes misleading and distinct from what is actually happening. And so I think it was a way for us to continue to build that relationship and have that conversation with our customer. And it was, I still laugh because we did this consumer research and they were asking about the slogan on our bottle that says, to the misfits, black sheep, and screwballs. I'm sorry, I'm pregnant, so I think my brain is working right now. But they were asking about the slogan, and I would see, I was watching them, right? Like they wouldn't let me watch them, but I barged my way in. There would be people and their immediate reaction was, that's me. And they would have positive reactions. And then they would start breaking it down. They'd be like, well, what is a misfit? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? They're like, well, I guess that's a bad thing. And then this, and then they would say, and so they're like, yeah, you got to take the slogan off. You got to take that off the bottle because they think that these are all associated with bad things. But it was something they identified with. And so it was so funny that you can kind of overanalyze and overthink and pull things apart into not really seeing what the customer is really feeling.
So it all must be so validating at this point to really feel like you poured all this blood, sweat, and tears into this thing, and it worked. But did you know it would work at the outset? And Brittany, you quit your job. You were a chemist, you were a lawyer. I mean, did you have any doubt?
I think Steven had a lot more doubts because I think he had seen so much failure, right? He's seen really good, big brands come in, and he's seen time and time again the failure. For me, I saw the product connecting with people. I saw the brand that we had this human truth and connection to people. And I had this unwavering confidence. It wasn't just in the product, but I think it was in Steven and I's combined ability. I think when we had started, so Steven and I had been together since high school. And when he started the restaurants, I had actually helped him and we worked together, and my career took us apart. And so I think I know that we have such diverse skill sets. So he's an amazing storyteller, as you can tell, and he's a great salesman. I'm relentless in my own ways, and I love putting the brands and taking these stories and really digesting them to their core essence. And so I knew there would be challenges. I think for me, I always say I like to play the long game. So it's not this immediate success, right? I just knew that at some point we'd be successful, right? And so I think that it came sooner than I probably expected, but I felt that if we keep at this, we'll eventually get there.
My follow-up for Michelle would be I feel like you are so good at asking for feedback and adjusting your product. And therefore, when you launched with Gorgie, it was this product that had an audience already and a kind of a fit. In the future, if you start again, or even when you were starting with Gorgie, do you have a metric for what is not success? Can you tell when the numbers are not moving, even if you think you've got a decent product?
Yeah, I mean, that's hard to answer in that success to me is I get people to believe, right? And so the reason that I went about Gorgie and not the 6 other brands behind me is I found myself being pulled, or people being pulled towards me around the concept. Jason Cohen is part of this, mission, and he's an incredible CPG founder behind, Skinny Pop, Veggie Straws, Core Water, all these amazing brands. And he was like, we should do this. And I'm like, we should. And then, you go to Expo East and you tell people, they're like, this is a great idea. And Whole Foods is like, we're going to launch this for you. You're like, this is a great idea. So my point is to the question of will it succeed? Similar to Brittany, you have to have this unwavering doubt. And trust me, every day I doubt myself. And when I do, I pick up the wedding card, or I look at something, or I go talk to somebody to take that doubt away. Now, the measurement of it's not working, is people don't like the product. If you're putting it out there and they're all like, oh, it kind of could taste better, or oh, I wish that this brand said this, it's statistics, right? And so that's why I start with the Google survey. Finance girl here is if I can get over 200 people to answer this and 70% are this way, that's showing an indicator. So it's my barometer is emotion with math.
I love that.
Do people care? And do the numbers also coexist?
Well, on that note, I think that's a good place to cap off our conversation. Thank you all so much for
numbers and
being
emotion.
With us.
Yes,
yeah,
I love it. That's so great. Yes, and yes, thank you so much. Sorry to step on your
No, that's perfect.
Your thank you. But Michelle, it's been so nice to talk with you again. Steven and Brittany, thank you so much for joining us. You have an incredible story, and we appreciate all your wisdom about product market fit.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's all for today's episode of From the Ground Up.
Be sure to subscribe at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice. Also, if you liked today's episode or have suggestions of what topics you'd like to hear about, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or reach out to us on Inc.'s social channels on LinkedIn, Instagram, and the app formerly known as Twitter.
From the Ground Up is produced by Julia Shu, Blake Odom, and Avery Miles. Mix and sound design by Nicholas Torres. Our executive producer is Josh Christensen. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week. And leave us a review.
They had a product they loved, and they needed to figure out whether other people liked it too.
So we sat down with Stephanie. Stephanie Yeng. Oh.
I think they would laugh to be like the Brangelina.
The Brangelina of whiskey.